It's not your debt. Your name should not be anywhere near it because legally you're not obligated to pay. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, and if this is your first time here, hello, welcome. This is Essential Patience and I am Patience. The lighting in the sun is very interesting today. Let's hope it looks better than it's looking to me. But let's get straight into this topic that I've been meaning to talk about, which is relationships and financial decisions. Mistakes never to make. Relationships and finances are very complicated, considering one of the top reasons people get divorced in the United States are financial reasons. But before people even get married, some people are starting to make financial decisions together. So we're going to be focusing totally on people who are not married, but in a relationship, and what not to do with people you're not married to, because it can get messy really quickly. So if you want to hear this topic and interested in more, remember to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and ring the notification bell because I post 2 videos a week. Let's get straight into the topic. These are some financial mistakes not to make in relationships. One of the first one is to not open accounts with people you're not married to. I'm talking about checking accounts, savings accounts, and definitely not credit cards. If you are in a relationship and let's say you're engaged and wanting to be married, what would then be the best way to do it? Maybe you can both have your individual savings accounts and then you bring your money together when you're married. But even before you're married, let's say you're both trying to pay for the wedding. It's a $30,000 wedding, like 50-50. You save your $15,000, he saves his $15,000. Why? Because a lot of things can happen between the engagement and the wedding. Things can happen. One of the things that could unfortunately happen is, let's say the person sadly dies. Now you have an account together and that account goes to their parents. How are you going to prove what money you put in? Now, of course, there's going to be traces and you can do it, but it just gets really messy because you're not married yet. Or let's say you break up and then a person decides to financially drain the entire account. There's not much you can do. Why? It was a joint account. What are the terms and agreements? Did you have a contract with them? No. So you want to make sure you don't put yourself in that financial position, in that horrible position of having to then go to court. Same with credit cards. Do not open a credit card together. Let's go back to the first scenario. You unfortunately pass away and let's say you had accumulated some level of debt on the credit card. Now you're in debt with your parent or with your next of kin. That gets, again, really messy really quickly. Let's go to the next one, which is that you break up, they go ahead and max it out. It will tank your credit and now you can't do anything about it. Let's say you decide to pay the minimum monthly payment, but every time you pay it off, they keep just putting more and more and more on it. And the court process also gets really complicated because the law does not recognize boyfriend. It does not recognize baby daddies. It does not recognize fiance. It's marriages that have a more defined way of how to divide up the debt, assets. So when you put yourself in a situation where you can have any of these happen to you, it's not a good financial decision. And speaking of assets, don't buy a house with somebody you're not married to. I know that today's economy, rents are high and it's cheaper to be married than to be single. When you have a house, you're growing the equity in the house, you're more likely to have a stable mortgage if you have a fixed rate interest rate. So you have a stable mortgage and you're both going to save. However, if you're not married, put this off until you are, because if you can't marry somebody, you should not be buying a house with them. You really should not be moving in and sharing that type of account with somebody you're not married to, because breakups happen. The rate of breakups versus divorce rates cannot even be compared. Most people break up versus the marriage rates. Now I know people say the rate of divorce is like 50%. First of all, that's all marriages, not first marriages, not second marriages, not third marriages. The more you get married, the more likely you are to divorce. All marriages, about 40 something to 50% end in divorces, but the first marriage is the most likely to last. Choose right the first time and try to make it last. But if you can't even marry this person first, don't be buying a house with them. It's a really big asset. Let's take, for example, you have a boyfriend and you decide to get a house together. Now that everybody's happy, a couple of years later, you want to get married. He doesn't want to get married. We're living together. We're acting married, but we're not married, and I want to be married. And he's like, no, well, why even complicate anything? We're already married. It's like we're already married, right? Now you don't want to be in that relationship anymore because you don't want to waste your time with somebody who wouldn't want to marry, and marriage is your ultimate goal. So you decide to move out, but you have to pay half the mortgage of the house unless he decides to sell it. Let's say he doesn't want to sell it. How are you going to dissolve it? Do you have a contract on how you're going to dissolve it if the relationship goes sour. Now, in a perfect world, you will live together, save money, hopefully one day be married, or both of you never want to be married. By the end of the day, people want different things. And if you want to get married, I mean, you don't have to have a big wedding. Go to the courthouse, get married, but do not buy a property with somebody you're not married to. That is setting yourself up for a huge disaster. Another way you can set yourself up for financial disaster is accumulating debt with somebody you're not married to. Now, I talked about the credit card part, but what about personal loans? Getting personal loans with people you're not married to, that's dangerous. Getting a car loan with somebody you're not married to, dangerous. Stop accumulating debt with people you're not married to. Because if that relationship does not progress to marriage and instead you break up, there is no defined ways to separate those assets. The law does not recognize non-married people. You're either single or married. Now let's take this scenario. First, buy a car for your boyfriend and you're both paying on the car, you pay it off, and then you decide, hey, let's buy a car for me. And you're paying it off, and then he decides that he doesn't want that relationship anymore. So he leaves. How are you going to get the equity you put into his car? Versus if you were married, they would take all of the asset, the community property, and then divide it up. And you can have more proof and more of a say in front of the judge. And you're more likely to be believed as well. Don't accumulate debt in general if you have to, which would probably be like a mortgage. Get it with the person you're married to. Next is never co-sign on a lease, on a purchase, on anything with somebody you're not married to. When you're married, you become one. Spiritually, legally, and financially. Or at least you should be. So you should have a level of combined finances, if not all the way. Now, with that being said, if you're not married and you're co-signing on a loan with somebody, you're putting yourself in danger. So let's say, for example, you co-sign on a loan with your boyfriend and he's buying himself a car because somehow he's a grown adult who has bad credit, who can't get a car on his own. So you have to co-sign for him, or vice versa. Now he defaults on the loan. What do you think is going to happen to your credit? It's going to tank. Or let's say that you both break up and then you find out years later that he's not been paying on the car loan, so he gets repossessed. Well, that's a repossession on your credit as well. So don't co-sign on it. Ideally, people should be able to buy their own things at that age. Like if they have bad credit and they are not financially savvy, the next best thing isn't to co-sign on a loan with them. It's for them to make better financial decisions, including buying in cash, prove their credit score enough to make sure that they put themselves in a good financial position to be able to get the loan they want. Co-signing on a product or lease or some sort of other thing with them is not good. If they can't buy it on their own, don't buy it with them, because it is not good. And who knows, maybe this will be like, oh, you're selfish and I don't want to be in a relationship with a selfish person. That's okay. You're going to save yourself a lot of headache later on versus what you're just trying to prevent right now by co-signing with them. The next one is not paying off debts with somebody you're not married to. Now, when you get married, I believe that you become one and you should be financially as well. Meaning that as I am debt free, if I get married to somebody who has $50,000 in student loan debt, I'm not going to be like, okay, that's all your student loan, you pay it off. Because if we have a combined finances, it's a household income. It's a household debt, meaning that I would contribute to paying it off. As we combine income, our combined income is going to go towards paying off the debts as well. That doesn't apply when you're not married to this person, because it's not a combined debt. It's not a household debt. Why are you paying off the debts of somebody you're not married to? This is leading up to breeding resentment. Let's say that you get in a relationship with somebody and she has $50,000 in debt, or he has $50,000 in debt. And then you decide to help pay it off because you're about to get married and you want to start getting married with no debt. So let's pay off our debts together. Let's say for the sake of it, you had $10,000 in debt. So you first pay off your $10,000 in debt with him, and then you both pay off his $50,000 in debt, or her $50,000. By the end, you're like, I'm not in this relationship anymore. Peace out. You're gonna feel better. You're gonna feel stupid and bitter for paying off debts with somebody you're not married to. It's not your debt. Your name is not on it. Another reason why you should be co-signing on loans and building and accumulating debt with somebody you're not married to. It's not your debt. Your name should not be anywhere near it, because legally you're not obligated to pay. So just make sure you're not paying off debt with somebody you're not married to. Next is, don't be splitting bills with people you're not married to. Now, I'm not talking about going on a dinner into an event and like splitting a bill. I am not talking about that. What I am talking about is not splitting bills in terms of not living together with somebody. If you are living together, you're roommates. Legally speaking, there's nothing that defines that relationship beyond roommates. This can get complicated when things are supposed to be leading up to marriage. Because why are you living with somebody that you're not married to. A lot of people may be like, okay, we want to live together before we get married, but this becomes complicated. I remember one of the saddest situations I ever saw was this lady. She was living with her boyfriend and she made about $180,000, which is a ton of money, but he was a multi-millionaire, apparently, if not a billionaire. They split the rent of their New York apartment, which was $9,000 a month. Now, while that was very minuscule to him, that was a huge part of her income. I mean, compared to what her post-tax income would look like, it would probably be different. But paying over $50,000 a year in rent alone was huge for her. Not to mention she had debt, and she was obviously not in the best financial position. She barely had anything in retirement. She had $30,000 in personal loan debt that she was not paying off, but she was paying over $50,000 a year in rent. When her boyfriend or fiance, whatever, could easily afford it, she couldn't. And had they not been living together, I believe that even prior to that, she was living more within her means than within his means. So when you're living together with somebody, it might be cheaper for one person, but not cheaper for the other, depending on who decides to foot most of the bill, if not all. It's just not a good idea to be living with somebody you're not married to. Because let's say that you decide you can't do it anymore and you need to break that lease. That could be really bad for you. Or they decide that they don't want to be with you anymore and they leave you with the apartment, and now you have to continue paying that lease on your own. Do not be splitting bills with somebody you're not married to. Next is, don't invest in businesses with people you're not married to. Now, if you're going in together as a married couple, that's really good. You have a defined goal. You are obviously one and all together, and the definition of that partnership is marriage and business partners. But again, legally speaking, if you're not married, then you're just business partners. So make sure that you don't go into business with somebody you're not married to. But if you do, have the proper documents that are not based on love talking in order to set yourself up in case that relationship does not progress into marriage. If it doesn't, what cut of the business do you have? Does he have? What are the obligations financially and responsibility-wise? What did you agree on? And don't just take talking lovey-dovey and just the best parts of the relationship as facts. Have the proper documentation that will protect you in case the business fails, in case the relationship fails, in case anything happens. Because you're not married, and so that the protections that come with marriage are not there for you. So don't go into business with somebody you're not married to. But if you do go into business, because I do know, like, realistically speaking, you know, some people may be business partners from relationships, so I understand that. Just make sure that you have the proper protection and documents to be secure in where you are. Ooh, the sun is really shining. Next is, do not lend money to people you're not married to, but also don't just lend money. I like to give what I can give, but I find it very awkward, and another reason I'm not splitting bills with somebody. So let's say I was living with somebody and I couldn't make rent this month. And it's like, oh, I will cover your part, but pay me back. I definitely will pay back because I don't feel entitled to people's money. If I had to collect that money back, I feel super awkward. Whenever people owe me and I have to talk about it and like remind them, like, hey, do you remember the time where you owe me this money and you say you're gonna pay me back? Well, I need it now. Like, that's so awkward for me. So I would never put myself in that position because I just can't do it. And I feel like when you're married to somebody, that's not the type of relationship you should have in a marriage, because you should be combined and there should be no lending money. Because why are you lending money to your spouse? That just makes no sense to me. I've heard of things like that and I just never get it. Why you're not in one accord? Because if you plan to live together, be married, and retire together, then you are together. What difference does it make? That lending money and then having to like awkwardly go get it back, it's not for me. I've already had to do it like people I'm not married to, much less with a romantic partner or with somebody I'm married. No, do not lend money. Give what you can, but then again, it becomes complicated without being married, because if it's your spouse, then you're just expected to do it. When it's a boyfriend, you feel more separated. You don't want to be taking up that cost. That's a stupid tax that come along with it. And this is the final big one, which is, do not combine finances in any way, shape, or form with somebody you're not married to. Be protected in the fact that you are single and you have your own finances and you have all the time in your life to combine after you get married. But there are no laws protecting boyfriends and girlfriends and fiancés financially speaking. It's just best to do things in order. I really think like today a lot of people are trying to rush into relationships and do everything but get married. it's kind of messed up. And that's probably another reason why the divorce rate could be high, because you're basically doing everything out of order. You have people who are married who don't want to combine finances at all, but then people who are not married who are just eager to just combine their money with somebody you're not married to. Do not fall into those traps, because there are a lot of dangers in it, which I'm going to give you a few bonuses with this. First one is, do not live with people you're not married to. Now, this is going to be controversial depending on having religious beliefs if you don't, but I think it's a horrible idea to live with somebody you're not married to. And I'm not talking about like strictly roommate, non-romantic based. I'm talking about a romantic partner. So if you can't afford an apartment, you only have a roommate who's strictly a roommate, like that's different. But I'm talking about a romantic partner who becomes a roommate. That is setting yourself up for failure, whether it is with just complicating things too early or not defining the relationship well in terms of marriage status before living together. So research shows that couples who are married and living together are much happier than couples who are just cohabitating. Also, just the overall satisfaction in your relationship while you're living with somebody married versus not married. And a lot of women who are not married showed a larger feeling of dissatisfaction. I really believe a lot of them did want to get married, but they just don't want to feel like they're talking about it too much or they're obsessed with it. They don't want to bring it up too much to their partner because the partner doesn't want to get married, because you're acting married. You're already playing house. So they're like, okay, we're already here. Why get married? And you want to get married. You want the title. You want the legal binding thing, and they don't. So you're just living together as roommates. In fact, most cohabitants are under higher stress and feel emotionally strained, less satisfied in their relationship, and less trusting of their partners versus married couples living together. And in the US, as people are delaying marriage, I think now the average age for marriage is like 27 compared to a few decades ago where it was like 21 years old. Or people are just not getting married altogether. The number of couples who are living together who are not married or never been married are growing more and more. And I'm going to put a link in the description of the research that shows that married couples are more satisfied in their relationship compared to people who are just cohabitating. But overall, I just wanted to bring this into our attention because since we're in a relationship, everything's so exciting and you want to move in together, you want to start combining everything together. Take your time to get to know this person, take your time to examine everything, and take your time to go through the process of courting, of getting engaged, and of getting married for being financially intertwined with the person. So with that, I'm bringing this video to an end. The sun is literally like killing my face. So let me just try not to be blinded by it. Thank you all so much. Like, comment, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And ring the notification bell because I post 2 videos a week on Tuesdays and on Fridays. Come on over because there'll be a video waiting for you. Oh my God, the sun. Like, it's just like... So thank you all so much and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.